of one. It's Friday, September 28th at approximately 8:40, and we have a pretty quick agenda, actually, in fact. So we've got a lot of folks here. Hopefully we'll clear the room right away. Since I don't have a quorum of the committee, we typically will go to public comment first. And since we could not legally have what would be satisfactory for public comment without a quorum of the committee, and I don't believe I have any cards on public comment anyway, we won't be having public comment unless we actually have a quorum. So those of you who have driven through pre-Carmageddon mornings to get here, I applaud your efforts, but there are no cards anyway. So with that, there'll be a communication from the chair of this committee unless that changes by the time we adjourn. So we're going to go ahead and I'll move the consent calendar first with a communication from the chair to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, item 7, 8, 9, items 10, 12, 13, and 14 through 19. So if you're here on any of those items, you're free to go to work. Oh wait, you are at work. All right, be safe out there. A lot of police officers leaving the room. Get them before they get you. Isn't that what they said in Hill Street Blues? Was that Hill Street Blues? Somebody help me out on that. Come on. All right, just kidding. I'm bringing all those items back now that we got rid of them. Not sure. On item 6, if you're here on item 6, I'm actually going to continue that item, and we have that item is married to another item. That's Council File 11-0595-S1. That is actually in concert with and parallel to Council File 12-0600-S161. Unfortunately, that item, which they should be brought together because they're related, directly related, was not sent to this committee, and nor is it agendized as such, and it should be. And so I will be requesting that to come. It's scheduled, I believe, for council on Tuesday. I will be requesting at council for that one to come back to public safety because they both should be heard together. And so we'll go ahead and hold item 6 pending a request to the council president for the other item to come back together to public safety at the next meeting, if not a special committee meeting, because they are directly related and it should have been referred to this committee as well. So if you're here on that item, I apologize for you coming in this morning, but it's always a terrific day to visit City Hall. Okay. Okay. There was one error that my staff made. I don't believe in throwing anyone under the bus, Doug Tripp, but he inadvertently numbered these incorrectly. So item 10, we're actually going to hear some items, unless if there's somebody still here on items 10. Item 11 was to go on consent instead. If the folks on item number 10 has already left, if you're still here?
We're on 11.
Oh, you're on 11. Okay, so 11, we're going on consent. And if the folks on 10 are calling them back to see if they can make it, then that'll be great if they can. If they can't, then I apologize. They can feel free. I will give you Doug Tripp's cell phone number. They can call him directly throughout the weekend.
I'm sure they're still available.
Okay. And then we'll go ahead and hear then item 5. John? If we could read item 5 and then ask anyone who's here to speak on item 5 to come forth.
Item 5, City Attorney Report and Ordinance requiring the posting of an informational sign by retail establishments where aerosol paint containers and marker pens are sold or displayed.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning.
Our office was requested to draft...
I'm sorry, if you could identify yourself
I'm sorry.
for the
Deputy City
record.
Attorney Brian Telly.
Yes.
Our office was requested to draft this ordinance, which would require a posting of an informational sign where individuals or companies that are subject to 49.84.4, which are retailers that sell aerosol cans, have to display an informational sign which would advise of the potential penalties for committing vandalism or graffiti, and also the potential fines involved, in addition to city rewards at the city's.
You said sell aerosol cans. You mean paint aerosol or
Yes.
just any?
Yes, spray paint bottles.
Okay. Just for the record, just wanted to clarify that.
And as indicated in the ordinance, this would go in conjunction with an existing ordinance as another subsection of that ordinance, which pertains to these retailers, that they have certain requirements, that they have to make sure that these aerosol cans are behind cages, that they're, that they have people that are protecting them, that if members of the public want to have access to them, they have to, seek assistance to get them. And so now there's going to be a sign that's going to also be required of them to post.
Great.
Which
Let
advises.
me ask you just a couple questions on that. One, in posting the sign, and I guess the verbiage here is graffiti vandalism is punishable by up to 3 years in county jail and a $50,000 fine. Is it and or?
It's and or.
Okay, this says and. Just wanted to make sure we had the same language. The City of Los Angeles may pay a reward of $1,000 for information resulting in the identification, apprehension, conviction of person or of persons responsible for graffiti. Do we typically put the ordinance number on those kinds of references on signs, or is that not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary unless you feel.
Do we have any specifications of, are we going to be providing those signs where they purchase them, or are we going to suggest they simply make their own? Do we have any specs on the type of the size or any elements to?
Well, it would be incumbent upon the retail establishment to provide their own signs. And I think within the ordinance, it specifies that the sign has to be a certain height in lettering. It has to be black lettering, at least 1 inch in height on white background, so that members of the public could see the advisements.
Excellent. And on the penalties for the stores that may fail to post the sign or post them correctly, what do we do? What's the enforcement and what's the penalty?
The enforcement, we have a graffiti removal and recovery regulation already in place in the municipal code. This is why we're putting this within 49.84.4, and there are administrative penalties associated for retailers that do not comply with the ordinance that are already contemplated in the code under, have a moment for a second, under 49.84.10 administrative hearing and fine requirements.
And is there any type of notification to the stores beyond just our simple adoption and posting 30-day requirements, or are we sending letters, or is there any way to notify them to do this, and is there time for them to become compliant?
If I believe if council would like that to occur, we could do that.
I would suggest that I don't think now's the time to be. It's not necessarily the store's fault that they're selling something that's used inappropriately and incorrectly. There's certainly a lot of retailers that are doing things. I think we've got to be a little more business friendly in our approach. While I understand and realize graffiti is a problem that's never going away, and it's cost us $3 to $5 million, I believe, a year to eradicate. And it's a very serious issue that affects and plagues our communities. And it goes back to the broken window theory that if you don't paint it out immediately, it's going to create and cause a lot of other problems. So I get it. and going after the folks that are selling the spray paint. We already require for them to lock it up, I believe.
Right.
We don't sell to juveniles. They have to have an attendant at the location, at the store, physically unlock and relock the cabinet. And so we go to great lengths already with our ordinances. This is yet another idea of a sign to inform folks, and I think those are good ideas. I just don't believe at a time right now when businesses are struggling we should be punitive as well. So I would make the recommendation that we give them 6 months. I think is reasonable to come into compliance. In fact, a lot of these stores will have to go out of their way, just thinking about the logistics, go to a sign company. These aren't signs they can go buy or pick up online. They're not pre-made, and they're going to have to actually physically order and request on the lettering and engraving and however they make these signs, unless I guess they spray paint them, but that would be wrong. And actually order these signs and then wait for the signs to be constructed and made and delivered or go pick them up. And so there's a lot involved. And so I think 6 months is reasonable as long as we've got a way we can first send out a letter to notify them of their that they have to do this. Do we have a way to do that? Do we know what vendors or what suppliers or companies out there are selling spray paint?
I don't have an answer for you,
Okay.
Councilman.
Well, when this comes back to council, can you supply an answer if somebody perhaps talked to the Department of Finance or others, if we have some kind of code or if there's licensing either through AQMD or others on who's selling? I got to believe somebody somewhere's got a database of, and you've got to have, I would think, some license to sell the spray paint cans. And if we can identify who they are to send a friendly letter, and I'm cautious that a friendly letter explaining that we're doing this to help the community and to save taxpayers millions of dollars, that this ordinance has been adopted. I think that's the right approach. And with that, I'll go ahead and send this to council with that recommendation. I'd like to give the author of this, the father, if you will, of this legislation, really the grandfather. He's been working on this for so long, of this legislation. Councilman Dennis Zine, an opportunity to speak on this.
Thank you. I have no problem with the continuation of 6 months so they can get the signs. Is there any requirement when you talk about display in a conspicuous location, is any dimension or any type of size or for them just taking a piece of paper and putting the penalties? Do we have any type of requirement, the size of the letters, et cetera, on the sign, how specific it may be?
Yes, within the ordinance, we specify that the lettering has to be at least 1 inch in height, and it has to be black, and it has to be on white backgrounds.
Okay.
Members of the public could see the advisement. And
Okay.
I just wanted to tell the chair that these are civil penalties for, say, retailers don't comply with the provisions within this section of the municipal code. I think it's $250 fine for the first offense and increases sequentially based on the administrative proceedings that are articulated within the ordinance.
Got it.
One of the problems that we had at the major retailers, when we did inspections at locations that sell spray paint, many of the major retailers, at least in the 3rd Council District, were not locking up. The ordinance had been in place for many years to lock up spray paint, and we had to go up the corporate level to finally get them to comply. Not the mom and pop stores. These were major retailers that for whatever reason they didn't lock it. And after action was taken, I think the city attorney took some enforcement action. They finally got the message they need to secure. But graffiti's been a nuisance for a long time, and I know we're not going to eliminate it, but we want to do something to at least bring in some compliance because the neighbors continue to complain about it. So this is just one step in the many steps. The $1,000 reward if someone apprehends someone who's spray painting, the tagging, et cetera. So it's just one more tool that hopefully will inform the people that you can't do it. But one of the biggest problems we had an ordinance on the books for many years, you must lock it, and we go to retailers and we did some inspections, they weren't locking it. They just didn't care. And that was one of the problems where people just steal it, not even paying for it, and the retailers were not taking aggressive action to secure. So what we're trying to do is enhance the community of the neighborhoods to try and something else with this in form of the consequences. So with that, this is a long time in coming, but hopefully we'll get some more accomplishment. And I noticed there were a number of rewards that have been previously approved by the chair for people turning individuals in for the $1,000 reward, which is also good. So we thank you with that. Thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Brian. And so it'll be a communication from the chair. The committee report will reflect that will, if you will come back when this comes to council, fix the language that says and or a $50,000 fine.
$50,000.
That is for the graffiti vandalism, the actual ones that cause the vandals themselves. It's punishable up to 3 years in county jail and or up, and it should say up to, I believe.
It does say up to.
Okay, the committee report is a little different than the copy I got. So if we can just ensure that it has that. Then we'll also recommend in the report 6-month grace period with a notification to the businesses.
But they could do it before if they wish.
They could, up to a 6-month.
What's the process? How do we
Before
know
any enforcement.
How do we notify them? How do we notify the?
Well, that's what I asked, yeah. So we went through some of that, and I'd be happy to reiterate that as well. I'd asked city attorney if they could work with Department of Finance or other regulatory agencies who may have a list of the vendors that and retailers that sell spray paint. Whether it's AQMD may have that list. I'm not sure exactly who has it, but we need to do that research before this comes to council, and then send them a friendly letter letting them know that this is to protect the community and to save taxpayer dollars.
So maybe hopefully someone has a list somewhere.
I'm sure somebody does.
Okay.
So we'll have that come back to council.
Okay, good.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Mr. Zine.
Thank you.
All right, that leaves one final item.
It does. Item 10, Board of Police Commissioners report relative to the 2012 Forensic DNA Backlog Reduction Program Grant Award in an amount up to $1,447,163 from the National Institute of Justice for use by the Police Department for the period October 1st, 2012 through March 31st, 2014.
Good morning, and I apologize for having to drag you back here. It was nobody's fault, but
I needed my exercise.
but Doug trips. But anyway,
Pass the buck.
we don't believe in throwing anyone under the bus. With that, good morning. So if you could, obviously, you could walk us through the grant, and we're happy to accept a grant to reduce the backlog. Some of my main concerns right off the top, and I appreciate you addressing this issue, is really the backlog and where are we at with the backlog, and what is this going to do to help. It says in the report, indicates that this will clear up approximately 340 of the forensic cases, but if you can walk us through some of that and what Touch DNA is all about and how we hope to use the money.
Well, we use a combination of funding sources to get through our DNA workload.
I'm sorry, if you could just for the record state
Yes.
your name and
Yvette Burney, Commanding Officer, SID, LAPD.
morning.
We use a variety of funding sources to get through our DNA work, combination of grants and general fund money, and even in the past, some private donation. Although we have been working diligently at building our in-house capacity, so we're less reliant on the outside contractors, we still do need them. So the status of the backlog right now is that for the sexual assault portion of the DNA work, we're pretty much up to date. We have a working caseload that's roughly 3 months worth of cases, so it's usually between 300 and 400 cases that we're working.
Let's not brush over that, if we could.
Okay.
There was a lot of attention over the years about the backlog, particularly in one of the most horrific crimes that could ever be committed, and those are sexual assaults. And the fact that there was a backlog in DNA, in which we heavily rely on to prosecute these cases and apprehend these these criminals and bring them to justice. The department has really made it a priority, and under your leadership, I think, needs to be truly recognized that you've been working diligently and not only with limited funds, but to prioritize the workloads. And you've just quickly said we're now up to date. And I just need to highlight that for a moment, what it means to the victims that are out there, and the fact that as we solve these cases, oftentimes these are not criminals that only conduct this type of offense once, unfortunately. And so the sooner and the quicker we can lock them up and take them off the street, the safer we all are. And so I think while you brushed over it very quickly, we've got to highlight that and applaud the department and your efforts and your leadership, as well as your team. And so I just wanted to take a second to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So going on, the sexual assault backlog, like I said, that workload is roughly 3 months worth of cases, so it's between 300 and 400 cases should be our average. If we're going over that, we're failing, and we're starting to create another backlog. So we're very diligent. You're absolutely right. We absolutely attack that and make sure that we're not letting that slip. But on the flip side, we're also working to better our turnaround time. So right now, we have between 300 and 400 because that's the capacity. That's as fast as we can work. But we're simultaneously exploring other methods and technology that will bring that turnaround time down. And consequently, the workload should also start to go down. And those technologies and methods are usually funded through some of these grants. So the Backlog Grant here will not only help us usually tackle some of our caseload with contractors' assistance, but in many cases we use some of the money to purchase technology for our own staff to use and better our own services internally.
And I understand that this grant has no matching requirement
Absolutely.
out of
right.
any taxpayer general fund dollars. So
That's right. So we need it.
free money. No, that's
Yes, free
that's
money.
fantastic. And thank you for actually seeking out the grant and going after it. This is tremendous, and so we appreciate it. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Zine for any
Just a
questions.
question regarding the grant budget. I can understand the laboratory services means it's going to contract with outside labs,
Yes.
okay? And the equipment, if they have additional equipment, overtime, which I understand, software license. The question I have is $63,000 for travel. Why would we have travel associated with doing analysis at a lab?
Because one of the requirements for entering into a contract with an outside vendor is that we do a site inspection to make sure that they are following the procedures that are accepted by the industry and that they are accredited under the accrediting bodies that are accepted by the department.
So $63,000, where are we going?
There's a lab in Texas, and I think there's one in Virginia, and there's one up north, and I'm not sure where the fourth one is.
And we're going to contract with multiple labs?
Yes,
And then we have to go out and do an inspection to make sure that they comply with the standard?
that's right. The other piece of that is we do fund some of our continuing ed and new hire training, and we do have to send them sometimes out to this training. So that is another component of that.
Okay, I just thought that I see the training cost $22,000. I thought it's like when you're working an overtime program, you've got experienced personnel that are working that program and use those dollars to do the process. I find it interesting that a lab is licensed by whatever agency, and then we have to go out there and inspect to make sure they actually comply with whatever agency licensed them in the first place?
Yes, we do. It's required.
Part of the grant?
Yes.
Okay. How many labs do we have in total?
Right now, we have 4, and we're in the process of contracting for 4. I think one of the items on your agenda today was one of those contracts. So we are in the process of redoing contracts right now.
So when you look at the percentage of cases, the DNA that we're doing in-house with our personnel, overtime, et cetera, versus what we're sending out, what percentage are we sending out versus in-house?
For rape cases, it's probably half and half. For all the rest of the work, it's probably a little more lopsided, maybe 75, 25, 25 being internal and 75 outsourced.
And if we were to hire additional personnel, city folks, would we be able to then do more of that in-house? Because isn't it true that if we send these out, we still have to do an analysis after they certify? We have to come back and do the test again?
It's not a full test. What we have to do is a tech review of their test results to make sure that their logic flowed through and was accurate before we certify that their work is competent to move forward and be uploaded to CODIS if it merits it.
So we're doing double testing.
It's not really double testing, it's an admin review. It's like getting a piece of paper that you review. You're not actually physically redoing that test and running it through the analysis.
You're just verifying it?
Verifying, yes.
Okay. So we're trying to obviously get those cases prosecuted, resolved, et cetera, and we see how much we're spending on, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, the grants come through to process as quickly as possible, like CSI. You see it, the crime occurs, the detectives go out there, they've got the suspect in custody and move on to the next case.
Absolutely. We would love to be able to say that we could do it just like they do it on TV, but the technology's not there yet.
Gary Sinise would come help you do that.
I would love to meet him.
He's a wonderful
All
man.
right, I'm going to bring the committee back to order. So that'll be a communication from the chair. We'll go ahead and approve the grant.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. That will conclude the Public Safety Committee. And on the off-the-record notification to the general public to be safe, that Police Officer Dennis Zine and I will both be working patrol on a special detail next week. So we won't announce what it is. We're not letting them know what it is.